Okay, let's get started. I wanted to do some program reminders. March, you do have some events that, or conditions, if you're going to go all the way to the certificate, you have to do. In March, on the 8th, and it's up here, the Career Expo is scheduled for that day. And actually, we do have a speaker coming in at 2 o'clock on that afternoon. So what you can do is come to Drinko, do a speaker series, and then go over to the Student Center for the Career Expo. You can do it all in one day, and that meets that criteria. Also, you have March 28th, the business etiquette course is scheduled, and you do have to sign up for that. And what I'm going to do this afternoon or tomorrow, I'm going to recap all these details in an email and send it to you and walk you through everything that you need to do for these two events. And then at your own time, you do still have to do the LinkedIn profile and the resume. And then, for these series, you have to do 5 events. So got your sign-in sheet and keeping track at who is attending. So if this is your first time, has anybody been here for the first time? Probably the very first time. So if you're not on that sign-in sheet and you had to write your name at the bottom, that means I don't have you registered. But by signing your name at the bottom, you're in the program. I'll add you to my list of students, and then my email address, and then each time you come in, you can just sign in with your name. So that's how you get entered into the program. Or you can go online and fill out the online form. So with that being said, everything that you have to do for March, I'm going to send to an email with the details. So today, yeah, go ahead.
How many more events of the speaker series will there be in total?
We have one March 1st, March 8th, another one later in March, and then I've got 2-3 other people that are interested in speaking. So you have to attend 5, but I hope to get a handful of events to choose from. That way, you're not scrambling at the very end to meet those 5 conditions. Yeah.
I have a question. Have an approved resume on Handshake? What does it mean?
I can send that to you. I can send an email. Everything, yeah. You go on the Handshake Marshall job board, and you, I've not done it myself, but you set up an account and have your resume posted on that account, and I can send that information to you as well. In this follow-up email that I'll do after today. And because the semester's halfway over, so yeah, we'll get everything sent to you, and that way you can, get your certificate at the end. So, anything else? Yep. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'm glad to see the familiar faces that were here before. If you see somebody on that sheet and you know that they're not here, say, hey, she's got you in this program, and come and take one of these, do one of these sessions. So, well, okay. With that being said, today we have Tricia Ball, and I would let her introduce herself to you. But we're very fortunate to have her as a speaker. So, let me get your PowerPoint.
We're good. All right. Thank you all so much for having me today. So you might have got a glimpse of the first slide was a map. So a little bit about what I'll be talking about today is where I come from and the people who helped shape me along the way. So really quickly before we get started, I'd love to go around the room. If you all could just tell me your name and your major and where you're from, just to get us started today. Would you mind to start us?
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Vishwa, and I work at Cohen. I graduated with Marshall's Masters of Computer Science from Marshall University.
Where are you from?
I'm from India originally.
Thank you.
My name's Nancy. I'm Associate Dean in the Lewis College of Business. And a long time ago, when I did my undergrad, I majored in accounting. And then I eventually got my MBA and my MS in information systems. And I'm originally from Chicago, if you can't.
Hi, my name is Penelope. I'm from France, and my major is a bit complicated, but I guess you can say it's human resource management.
Okay.
Nathan, I'm majoring in finance, and I'm from Barbersville.
I am Nick. I'm from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I major in economics, and I work at the Center for Business and Economic Research here.
My name is Isabel. I'm a business and marketing major. Oh, and I'm from Charlestown, West Virginia, which is in the Eastern Panhandle.
I'm Colton. I'm going for my MBA right now. I graduated semester before last with a business management degree, and I'm from Carmel, West Virginia. Jameson Lewis. I'm majoring in management with minors in professional writing and marketing, and I'm from Nitro, West Virginia.
Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Porter, and I'm from Wayne, West Virginia. I am the business manager here for the College of Business.
I am Kelsey. My major is accounting, and I'm from Gallipolis, Ohio.
Okay. Hello. Okay. I'm Paul, and my major is computer science.
Where are you from?
Okay. And I'm from Taiwan. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.
Don, would you like to?
Hello everyone, my name is Gordon Wang. I'm from originally from China, and I'm a transformer coordinator for Cohen's business. My office was in his office, and like what we're doing, like we take photos for you guys, and then we have running several international programs and study abroad, which involved in last year, and I hope you guys.
We're just say our names and our major and where we're from. If you want to jump in.
My name is Hannah Ngo. My major is supply chain management and
Thank you. It's nice to meet you all. So like I said, I think it's important just to figure out where people are from. Like we have from Wayne County to China to India to Chicago. So a great mix. I am from Farmington, Pennsylvania. That is, if you're familiar with West Virginia at all, it's about halfway between Morgantown and Pittsburgh. Farmington sounds like it's the kind of city that you imagine a town like Farmington would be. So I grew up, there's no traffic light in the town that I grew up in. Not as many farms as you would think, but about as quiet as you would think. So our downtown consisted of a Pizza Hut and a post office. So I lived across the street from the post office, and things were really happening, but it was like, I did not grow up where you could, walk down the street and play with neighborhood kids or anything like that. We had to drive to go trick or treating. We had to get in a car and drive a mile. You couldn't just, when I go trick or treating with my kids, we can just walk them up and down the street. But yeah, you could not do that in Farmington, where I come from. The meaning of this Diet Coke. So I always like to tell people kind of the way that I grew up. I think it's important to know, when you're learning somebody's background and their history, just to get a sense of kind of what lens and what perspective they're using. So we did not go without food. We had running water, but things were tight. So I used this example of the Diet Coke because I was talking to my mom a couple months ago just about, I remember like we would have cars that broke down and I remember things being tight, and she made the comment to me, your dad was never the type of guy who got me flowers, but every once in a while he would save up enough money every couple months to buy me a Diet Coke because he knew that's what I really liked. So that's why I grew up in a family where it was a treat to have, for my mom to have a bottle of Diet Coke. It was something that my dad had to save up for, for her for a couple months. We went to this store. It's called Peachin's. Has anyone been to the West End Aldi and the Barbersville Kroger? Okay, this store that we went to called Peaches would make the West End Aldi look like the Barbersville Kroger, but it was where we could afford to get our groceries. But I did have a wonderful childhood, great memories. I have an older sister. I was just talking to Dr. Langton about my older sister who lives here now too. My dad was a logger, so I always say that's my Appalachian street cred, that my daddy was a logger. And he was also a truck driver. So it was an ice cream truck driver, but not like the kind of ice cream that, you drive up and down the street with the music and you bring children happiness. Like it was a big rig that you would deliver the ice cream from the ice cream plant to the grocery store so they could sell it out of the big freezers. So he would get up bright and early in the morning and he would do his route as quick as he can. And then to make some extra money so that my mom could stay at home with my sister and I, he went and had this logging business where he would buy property, cut down the trees, sell the property, and then just do it all over again. And it was the day before Easter, so it would have been one spring when I was in 3rd grade. He was out in the woods, and he had been doing this since he was 12 years old. So my great-grandfather, when he came to the United States from Italy, he was a logger, and that was passed down to my grandfather and then my father. My maiden name is Cesarino, which is a much cooler last name than Ball. But I have a Wayne County husband, so yeah, you don't hyphenate names when you're from Wayne County, do you? No. So he was out in the woods. Like I said, he had been doing this for over 20 years. He had been doing it since he was 12, and so he knew what he was doing, but something went wrong and a tree fell down and it landed on top of him. And it was centimeters away from killing him. You could see where it hit him on his ear and brushed him, but it landed on his right shoulder and it destroyed every single nerve in his right arm. So from that point forward, he couldn't feel it, he couldn't move it. His right arm was still attached, but it just hung there. You could go up to him and poke him or burn him or do anything to him and he would never know. He could bend it at the elbow, but he didn't have any movement in his fingers. And like I said, no feeling. So I don't know if any of you have ever driven a big rig or operated a chainsaw. I'm gonna guess not, but you can imagine that those would be pretty hard things to do without the use of your right arm, right? So in that moment, just in that snap, as soon as that tree fell down, that was our family's entire sense of livelihood went in that moment when that tree fell on him. So our parents started a business. This us, we had a pizza shop. It was in Ohio, Pennsylvania, which is a whitewater rafting town. This is me and my dad. I think I was in middle school or high school here, so this wasn't in 4th grade when they bought it. But the population of that town was 60 people, so there was not enough business to stay open all throughout the year. So they were open from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And they had to make things do over the summer when the tourists were there, and then they shut down for the winter. And that's where, so through my story, I've injected some key takeaways or key lessons that I wanted to share with you as part of the Professionalism series. So my first lesson is run it like you own it. So it's something that I learned through my parents having this business. So like I said, I was in middle school or high school there. When I was in 4th grade, I started out, I had a stool to stand behind the pizza counter and I took people's orders and I got their fountain drinks. And by the time that I graduated high school, I was doing our inventory, I was doing our scheduling, I was doing our payroll, I was doing the bank deposits, I was doing the laundry. We were the janitors, we were the human resources department, we were the marketing department, we were everything. And like I said, by the time I graduated high school, I was doing all of that. But it really instilled this sense in me that I think has benefited me as I've gone throughout my career, that if we didn't have somebody show up for work and show up for work on time, like we would have to miss family reunions. If we had a group of people scheduled to come in the afternoon and they didn't show up, we couldn't do what we had planned for that weekend. Or if we had people that were either stealing or kind of wasting their time, if there were things that you could clean or if there was food that you could prep, or if you were I always remember my mom would always talk to us about how close we were putting pepperonis to each other on a pizza. It affects your bottom line. So I think when you grow up in a family with a business, it really affects your mindset of, I'm going to use this money like it's my own. So when I used to work in the College of Business and we had grants, there are some people, if you have grants, you could be like, oh, hey, this isn't my money. I'm going to spend it however I want. But with this run it like you own it mentality, it's always been very important to me. If this were my money, how would I be spending it? Would I want to just kind of let it wait up to the end of the year and just go buy, fun stuff with it that we don't really need? You want to be really strategic about how you're budgeting that out through the year and making sure that you're using it efficiently. So I think that would be my first piece of advice to you all, is to run it like you own it. So for any internship that you have, any job that you have, just think about, you know, if my parents own this or I own this, how would I want people working for me to be an employee? What would I want them to do? So, like I said, that was in 4th grade when we got that business. Like I said, things started out tough for us, but once we had that business, we could slowly start seeing our lives transform. So I grew up, you know, I had hand-me-downs from my older sister. We never really went on vacations, and as we had that business, things just started to turn around. I got to go to Disney World for the first time when I was in 6th grade. We started to go shopping at the mall and getting new clothes. And I think one of the biggest things that had an impact on me is that I was a first-generation college student because my parents had this business. If they didn't start this business, I wouldn't have had that opportunity available to me, which is now why I have such a passion for businesses and helping people who have businesses. So don't come at me with your spears. I went to WVU as a first-generation college student. Please forgive me for not going to Marshall, but that was just huge for me. Like I said, my parents were C&D students. They made it through high school just barely. But if they wanted to go to college, they wouldn't have been able to afford it. So it was the opportunity of a lifetime for us to be able to go and pursue higher education. While I was there, I started out as a broadcast journalism major, and I took one class my first semester, and they told me, hey, by the time you take this class, you're going to learn how to go shoot video and come in and edit it, and you'll do the voiceovers for it. And I was like, oh man, I thought I got to sit at like a counter with a cup of coffee and talk for an hour. I didn't realize I had to go and like shoot all the videos. So I decided that that was not for me, and switched to being a public relations major with events. I wanted to do event planning and event management as a career path. And somebody told me, you have to get an internship. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? You have to get work experience, you have to get an internship, you have to have something to put on your resume. So I was like, okay, where am I going to do that? Again, as a first-generation college student, my parents, they weren't really there to help me. It was actually my high school principal took me on my college visits. So when it was him and his wife who drove me around Pennsylvania and West Virginia trying to help me decide, you know, what my major would be and what college I was going to. So I just, it's like, okay, we have the student union, it's called the Mountain Lair, and I found there was an office that did event planning, and I just went and knocked on the door one day, and I said, hey, I see that you plan events, and I want to do event planning. I need some experience on my resume. Can I plan some events for you for free so that I have something to put on my resume? And this lady who we're so close today, her name is Sandra. I always called her my WVU mom. She's like, I have been here for 20 years and no one has ever come and asked me that. How about I pay you to do that? So I got to manage the Mountaineer mascot schedule. So for the next 3 years, anytime that somebody wanted the Mountaineer mascot to come and talk to them or go to a birthday party or a retirement party, I was the one who kind of dispatched him and did all of his reimbursements. Any student affairs events, Hall of Fame dinners, planned those. Mountaineer Week, which is 10 days with like 5 to 10 events every single day. I had the opportunity to plan that. So my second takeaway is don't wait for an opportunity to present itself. Sometimes you have to ask. If you see a great opportunity to provide value, if you see something that you can say, hey, that would be perfect for me to step in, I have something to offer there, don't be afraid to ask. Just go for it. Because if I wouldn't have walked up to her and had that, I wouldn't have had those 3 years with that really valuable experience that has really shaped my career. So sometimes you can't wait till a job is posted or till your supervisor asks you to do something. You want to take the initiative and do that. So as I was working for her, she was, like I said, in the Mountain Lair in the Student Center. I walked back one day to her boss and said, hey, what do you do? What you do looks kind of fun. And he said he was the Assistant Vice President of Student Affairs. I don't like that. So again, when you grow up in Farmington, you kind of have a limited idea of what your career paths might be. So I knew that teachers existed and nurses and doctors and lawyers, but I had no idea what student affairs even was until I was in that environment and working for him. So once I found out that that was a career path, I went to the University of Florida to get my master's in student personnel and higher education. So that's me, some of my friends in grad school. So I went to the University of Florida for grad school. I ended up graduating. All of my friends left and got jobs across the country, and I stayed and worked for the University of Florida for a few years. I had big dreams. I wanted to be the dean of students at a large public university. And, any committee that I could sign up for while I was there, anything that I could volunteer for or help out with, I did that. I was really passionate about that. I was a professional sorority girl, as I like to call myself. So I was in a sorority when I was in undergrad. And what I did when I graduated, I was a program coordinator for sorority and fraternity affairs. So I worked with the house parents at all of the fraternity and sorority houses, and I helped plan recruitment and did organizational advising with all of them, helped give them advice on recruitment strategies and fundraising strategies. And then, like I mentioned, my husband's from Wayne County. So after 2 years of working there on this trajectory to be a dean of students at a large public university, I met a boy from Canova, West Virginia, and he wanted me to move to Huntington, where he was. So we did long distance for a couple months, and I decided to go ahead and make that move and move from Gainesville, Florida to Huntington, West Virginia. I always say I moved here for 1 year, 10 years ago. So we said that we would move here for 1 year and just try it out and see how things went, but then we were gonna move to a big city like Pittsburgh or Columbus or Cincinnati. And as you can see, we're still here and we still love it. But when I moved here, I didn't have the same opportunity. So, I applied to a couple jobs at Marshall. They didn't have anything in student affairs or in fraternity and sorority life available when I moved here. So my next piece of advice is to take time to do an audit of what energizes you. So at that point, I had a decision to make. So I had this master's degree. I had this job I loved. I had this plan that I was following, that it wasn't going to work anymore. So I just, once I was like, okay, it's not going to work out for me, that I get to go work, for Marshall and kind of continue on this path. So I had to sit and think about, what are my favorite days at work? When I leave work, on days that I feel I have more energy at the end of the day than I do when I started. Have you ever had like a day at class or work where you walk away and you're just like, ugh, and you want to go home and like hide in bed and not come out of a corner for a while? So like not what you're doing on those days, but days when you have like, you're just more excited, you're happier, you have more energy than when, figure out what you were doing that day and try to figure out how to do more of that. And when I thought about that, I did a lot of leadership development programming. So when we had new presidents coming in student organizations, I would get to take them away for 2-day leadership retreats. I got to do a lot of leadership conferences and planning for those and speaking at those. And those were my favorite days. So I started looking for jobs where I could be training. So I just put it, training Huntington, West Virginia. And I found this job where I was working for a marketing company called IMG Live. It was an experiential marketing company based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and one of their largest clients was DirecTV. So I worked from Huntington, West Virginia in the DirecTV call center, and I was an ambassador, and I taught the call center agents about HBO and Cinemax, Stars, and NFL Sunday Ticket. And I was responsible for training all of the new hire classes and going to team huddles anytime they had new shows and movies coming out. And then I would run incentives. So I would pretty much teach you how you would, if somebody calls you and wants to complain about their bill for DirecTV, I would teach you how to sell that person who's complaining how to spend $20 more a month to pay for HBO. And then I would give out TVs and gift cards and all sorts of stuff for people who were able to do that. So one of my presentation titles that I contemplated was Glorified Carney to CEO, because I had, like I said, I pretty much gave out prizes for a living, and I had a call center agent come up to me one day and said, so you're pretty much just like a glorified Carney, right? I was like, I guess you could call it that if you want to. I played games for a living and I gave out prizes. It was a fun job. But while I was in that job, so I was there for 4 years at the call center, and then I was promoted into an account manager role. When I first started in that account manager role, my territory went from about Watertown, New York to Tulsa, Oklahoma to Valdosta, Georgia. At that point, I had a 2-year-old and a newborn at home, and I was worried about what the travel schedule would look like, but they assured me that I would be out of town maybe 2 days a month or something like that, nothing crazy, that these were all overnight trips that I could go do. But I started in February. By March, AT&T and DirecTV, they were merging, and they made the decision to shut down all of their domestic call centers and open international call centers. And that is when my territory went from Watertown, New York and Tulsa, Oklahoma to the Philippines and San Salvador and Panama City, Panama. So instead of going to Tulsa, Oklahoma for 1 day a month, I was in the Philippines for 10 days at a time. And I would come back, and then I had to go to Atlanta for a week at a time. And then I'd have to come back and go to San Salvador. And after my second 10-day trip to the Philippines in 6 months, I got home and my husband, who's a financial advisor, who was in the early stages of building his book, said, this isn't working for us. So I was just spending too much time. So just had a leap of faith. We knew it wasn't working for our family. I quit that job so that we could find something that worked for us better. So my next piece of advice is that you will always be replaceable at work, but you'll never be replaceable at home. So I know this is a professionalism series. I don't know if that's the advice that you would expect to get in one of these, but you do just have to keep in mind what is best for you as an individual and your family if you have one or if you decide to have one at some point down the road. So that was really important to us. Like I said, that we took that leap of faith and did it. I will hop back a second for the treat the CEO and the janitor the same. So when I was in that role at the call center where I was playing games for a living and I was a carny, one of the things that was really important, so I did not actually work for DirecTV, but I worked inside of their building. And we had these ambassador positions all across the country. And we would get on these calls once a week and everybody would say, like, I need reporting so that I know who runs my incentives. And this call center won't give me my reporting, or I need storage. You know, we get all of these t-shirts and gift cards and everything to give out, and I don't have anywhere to put those. They won't give me space to put those. And meanwhile, I had my own office and entire story upstairs of storage that I could use and lock up all of my stuff. And everybody was like, Tricia, how do you do that? How do you have access to your reporting? How do you do that? It's because I was best friends with the facilities and the maintenance department. So I think that would be, you know, something that I would recommend to you all as you go into your careers is to remember, you know, a lot of people want to walk into a room when you're networking, you want to go to the CEO, you want to make, or the president or whoever the vice president is, or whoever is the most important of the room, you want to go and network and, you know, make connections with them and make sure they know about all of the great work you're doing. But I really just encourage you to make sure that all across the levels of the organization, no matter who it is, CEO, janitor, kitchen, whatever it might be, just to treat all of the people the same, because you never know when you might need that storage, when you might need that report. So just make sure to keep that in mind as well. All right, so this is when I came to work for Marshall finally. So after 5 years of being in Huntington, I know I said it didn't work out when I first moved here to work for Marshall, but this is when I went to work at the Appalachian Transportation Institute in the Center for Business and Economic Research as the Director of Marketing. Again, I took that leap of faith. I was ready to take a pay cut of about a third. I was going to go work for a realtor who's a good family friend of ours. He was kind enough to say, hey, well, you can come help me out with some marketing. I know that that's what you've been doing. And right at the last minute, this opportunity came up for me, and I went to work at ATI in Seaver, and I worked for Senator Bob Plymel. I'm sure that you work with Senator Plymel now, and he was just wonderful to me. He gave me so many opportunities. Not only did I have the opportunity to do the marketing, which was in my job description, but with him as a state senator, with him as the president of the Keith Albee Performing Arts Theater Board, any sort of meeting that he had, he would let me come along into. So he would invite me into those meetings. He would have me part of those conversations. If someone would come to see him, he would just say like, hey, Tricia, you want to come in here and be part of this? And that was a game changer for me. I firmly believe that I would not be where I am today if Senator Plymel would not have been kind enough to do that for me. So my next key takeaway is to bring someone along for the ride. He could have easily said, Tricia is our director of marketing. If we're not talking about websites, if we're not talking about social media or logos, that this is not a conversation that she needs to be a part of it. But I am, you know, I've already mentioned a couple of people that have kind of helped me along the way. My high school principal who took me on those visits, that person at the student center at WVU who took a chance on me, Senator Plymel. So it's just really important, people who see something in you that you don't see in yourselves. So just be somebody who looks out for those people as you move up in your careers and bring them along for the ride with you. Let them be part of those meetings. Let them work on projects. Take a chance on people. All right, so do y'all know this guy? I'm sure some of you have met, yeah, Dr. Ben Ng. Yes, all right, so this is where Dr. Ben Ng enters my story. So I was working as the director of marketing for ATI and Seaver when I met Ben. So this is obviously like a throwback picture of Ben, right? I have a more current picture of him in here soon. When I first met Ben, he was a professor of marketing. I was in a marketing position. We just met to talk about a capstone class. The whole purpose of the initial lunch that we had the first time I ever met him was I said, hey, I have these marketing projects. I need help. You have marketing students who need real world experience. How can we work together? And he told me about this thing called design thinking and this thing called the I Center in the College of Business. And this picture, that's where this picture kind of comes in. He talked to me about Ming's Restaurant, which is one of the most popular Chinese restaurants in Huntington, West Virginia. It's closed down now because his parents retired. But he also had a generational transformation because of his parents owning a restaurant business, just like I had with my parents. So his parents came from China. They started a restaurant. They still sent money back to their village the entire time they had that restaurant. And he was just on this mission to pay it forward and help other people. He was able to go and get an education and get a PhD and be a wonderful professor here at Marshall because his parents had that restaurant. I shared my pizza story with you. So we kind of just really bonded over that shared history. And he told me, I just want to rewrite West Virginia's history from one of generational poverty to one of generational prosperity. And I was like, sign me up for that. I want to do that too. So that's when, here's more in his funny little chef hat. This is us in Calhoun County in southern West Virginia doing a Design for Delight workshop a couple years ago. As you can see, how do we bring prosperity to West Virginia? So this was us doing a design thinking workshop as a grant that we had. So I spent, I think it was 3 years, maybe Nancy, you would know, at the I Center. But my key takeaway, one of many there, because for those of you who know Ben, he is just a brilliant mind, tons of energy. I always say I get smarter every time I get to spend time with him. I think so highly of Ben. But build your team with people who have different strengths than you. So, like I said, for those of you who know them, he has big ideas and he's high energy and if you're talking about parts of the body, Ben is the brain and I'm the hands and the feet. But when we built that team, that was really important for us to have both the hands and the feet and the brain. So I think that's, as you move up in your careers and you're the boss and you're looking to build that team around you of what you need, are you the executor? Are you the strategizer? Are you the relationship builder? And making sure that you can build your team and surround yourself with people who have different strengths than you to make sure that you can make things happen. Another key takeaway from our design thinking training. How many people here have been trained in D4D or design thinking? Okay, so you all will already know this, so I'll go quickly through this. But disrupt or be disrupted was one of the big things we talked about when we were doing our trainings as part of the I Center and on D4D. If you think of big companies like Sears and Kodak and Blockbuster 20 years ago, you would have never thought that they wouldn't be around today. They were just, Blockbusters. That's what you did on a Friday night. You went and you picked out a movie and went and got some pizza, and that's just how you spent your weekend. You would have never thought that they would be gone, but it's, along came Netflix. So a process for doing that is design thinking. So in its most concentrated form, obviously we just did a Design for Delight workshop yesterday that was an hour and a half. We could do it for 3 days or 6 months. So really quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with Design for Delight, the first step is to walk a mile in your customer's shoes. So my favorite story or example of this is Intuit when they were doing their deep customer empathy, which is the first step of it. They were looking to innovate for pill bottles, and they were going, and it's really important that you observe somebody trying to do something or in their setting, because when you fill out a survey, you get this much, and people can, number one, lie because they want to tell you what you want to hear, whereas if you're watching them, they can't really tell you what you want to hear. But also, they went to this lady's house to talk about her arthritis medication, and they said, can you open your pill bottle? And she said yes. So if you would have sent out a survey in that situation, could you open your pill? That's all you would know is yes, she's fine. We don't need to change pill bottles. She's good. She can open it. And they said, show us. And she took them down to her basement, and she had an old deli cutter, like a meat cutter, and she put her pill bottle there, and she took the meat cutter and she chopped off the lid of it. And so, yes, she can open it, but is that the best way that we really want people to open their pill bottles? Absolutely not. So it's all about observing somebody in their environment, walking them out in their shoes, getting empathy for them so you can really understand their pain points and what they're going through. The second step is go broad to go narrow. Does anybody remember Boy Meets World, or am I too old? Yeah? Okay, so I know it's Topanga. What's Topanga's boyfriend's name? I'm blanking on. Remember? Is it, yes, Corey, and Topanga. So for those of you who don't know, this was like a cheesy sitcom from the 90s, but they were each other's first boyfriend and first girlfriend. I always say your first idea is like your first boyfriend or girlfriend. You're like super in love with them at the time. You think they're wonderful. You think it's the best thing ever. But when you break up and like look back a year, 5 years later, you're like, what was I thinking? That was the dumbest thing. What was I doing back there? So your first idea will normally come very easily. You'll think it's the one. You tend to get hooked on it and fixed in on it. But if you keep pushing yourself beyond that initial idea, you realize that sometimes, okay, that didn't work at all, or it just wasn't very innovative. It might have worked, but it wasn't innovative. It wasn't delightful. It's not a solution that people would love. So I said, treat that first idea you have when you're innovating as a first boyfriend or girlfriend, just, appreciate it for what it is and move on. The second step, this is my favorite illustration to describe rapid experiments with customers. You want to test something on somebody who's actually using it. So here's some parents with a baby mobile saying they love it. Look how cute this is, all these little animals. But when you're the baby laying there, you look up and you see animal butts. So when you're the designer of a solution, what you think is great might not always be great from your customer's perspective. That's why you want to take your solution, put it in front of a customer, see what they think, get feedback from them, and then keep iterating. So like I said, at its briefest, 2-minute level, that's D for D. So a couple years into the Eye Center, I heard that Bill Bissett had moved on to Senator Shelley Moore Capito's office, and the president and CEO role at the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce was opening. I always said, so when I went from working for Senator Plymouth to the Eye Center, I had a family friend who said, what's your end game here? Do you want to run for politics one day or something? And I said, I never want to run for politics, but one day before I retire, I think right before I retire, I would love to lead the Huntington Chamber of Commerce. So I was 34 when this opened up, and I was like, I don't know if I even have a chance at this, but I said I always wanted to do it, so we're going to try it. So a year ago, it was February 1st is when I hit a year at the Chamber. I started at the Chamber of Commerce. I always say that they are stuck with me for a really long time, or I get to retire early, because I said that this was my last gig before retirement. So a little bit about what's going on at the Chamber, what I've learned there. Obviously, I've only been there a year, so still learning new things every single day, but don't market more, matter more. I think I have heard so many people just in my work at the Eye Center, when we were at the incubator, I helped out with that for a little bit as well, is that everybody with business ideas trying to start a new business would come into us and say, like, I have this wonderful idea, I just need some marketing help. Who can you get me to help with my marketing? Or, oh, we have this chamber, it has 550 members, there's 2,000 businesses in Calhoun and Wayne County, just do a marketing campaign or a membership drive or something like that. But my big thing is don't market it more, matter more. When you have a really good product, you don't need the marketing. So if you have an experience that somebody truly loves, like we were just talking about with Design for Delight, if you have that thing that somebody truly loves, like Tesla, do they really need to do a lot of marketing, or do people just love Teslas and tell everybody that they know that they drive a Tesla and how wonderful it is? What's something else you can think of that you don't have to do a whole lot of marketing? People just know that it's good.
That's why iPhone started.
iPhone? Yeah, iPhone. Rolexes. Some of your luxury products. So I think that's the big thing right now at the Chamber that we're working on. So we have these 575 members. So instead of going out and saying, okay, you're not a member, you need to join, you need to join, you need to join, we are trying to make their member experience so meaningful for them that they're going to go and tell every single other business owner that they know, I'm a Chamber member because of this. I love it. I can't imagine ever not being a member of the Chamber. You need to be one too. So I think it's just finding those ways, those really, return on investment. So people need to know what they are specifically getting for it. Right now, we are seeing a generation of joiners retire from the workforce. So the baby boomers that are retiring right now, they were in bowling leagues and Rotary and Lions clubs and country clubs, and you see a lot of those organizations right now having a really hard time if they haven't already gone away, because the Gen Xers and those who come after them aren't, it's not their civic duty to join something like it was for older generations. They want a very specific reason why should I join that chamber? Why should I join Rotary? So that is one of the things that we're prioritizing right now. We just finished a 5-year strategic plan that we call 5 to Thrive. So we are the chamber, it's called the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce, but we are serving all of Cabell and Wayne County. So I've actually had a couple of people ask me, I think it's like 3 or 4 in the past 2 weeks that have said, who's the president of the Barboursville Chamber of Commerce? Well, that's actually me. So we have all the way from Ona and Milton to Barboursville to Kermit, all the way down through Wayne County. So it is the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce. I think we have been a little Huntington centric in years past. We have a lot of things in downtown Huntington. So we are making an intentional effort to make sure that we are a 2-county chamber. That's where the 2 comes in. And then the 3 C's. For those of you who have heard President Smith talk, he normally has 3 C's or 4 D's or 3 E's to help you kind of remember and prioritize things. So our 3 C's are connect, cultivate, and catalyze. Connect, when we say that, so networking, collaboration, so bringing people together. We do after hours networking events. We do lunch and breakfast networking events. We have some networking groups. So we have a women's networking group, a young professionals group called Generation Huntington. That's for 21 to 45-year-olds that I would recommend any of y'all to join if you're wanting a way to get plugged in to the Huntington community. For Cultivate Growth, that's really helping businesses grow. So whether that is doing member-to-member referrals, or somebody calls the chamber and says like, hey, where do I buy a generator? Or hey, where should I go, get my car washed? Or where do I get my nails done? So we will refer them to members to help their businesses grow. That's also something that we're looking at doing, is working more with Marshall students to provide you all, especially as College of Business students, for those of you who are in the College of Business. So you need that real world experience we were talking about, and we have a lot of small businesses in Huntington who need help. They are 1 or 2 person shows who, just like my family growing up, you're everything. You're HR, you're marketing, you're accounting. So how can we pair students up with those businesses to get them the help they need? That's part of that plan. For Catalyzed Development, that's our educational arm. So we're looking at starting a leadership development program. We also do lunch and learns. We just had one yesterday. And then just seeing how we can expand doing, just instead of once a month lunch and learns, can we do an 8-week series on marketing and just really helping people, especially those smaller businesses. I keep mentioning them. So I said we have 575 members in the chamber. More than 70% of them have 5 employees or less. So it's really important to us that we can set them up for success. A lot of times they don't have time to come to a lunch and learn. They don't have time to come to a business after hours that we do because they're running their business. So what kind of educational opportunities can we maybe do for them online, or can we post a recording of that they can go back and watch later when they have time? How can we provide a 2-way street that they can come to us and say, hey, I need you to go ask legislators for me to pass this. I really need this for my restaurant to succeed, or for my law firm to succeed. I need your help in this area. So if you're, a larger business in town, they typically have somebody on their staff who is dedicated to government relations. They have an advocacy person on their staff who can do that for them. But our smaller businesses need somebody to be their advocate and be the voice of business. And that's what we aim to do at the chamber. So that's what we're focusing on right now, is really narrowing down on our priorities. Something that's not up here, but I have also learned in my career is you can't be everything to everyone. The more you try to be to people, when you try to be everything to everyone, you're just like nothing to everybody, pretty much. It's, you have to specialize in something. You have to narrow it down and decide what you want to focus on so that you can be exceptional at it. Because if you're just mediocre at 50 different things, you're not helping everybody. So if you pick those 3 things or those 5 things that you can be really exceptional about, that's when you're going to see change. Great. Do y'all have any questions for me? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Make sure your name's on the sign so you can be credited. So I will send you all the information for the other programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta sign it.
Probably need to get some bigger next week too.
was like, I literally said, here's your key, when you sign in, you want to sign in, and then you said, yeah.
Yeah, did he say that?
What did I say? Yeah. I can only work
Remember
20
that,
hours a week.
I heard,
Yeah.
I'll be right there.
Bro, this is like, no one listens to me.